Good afternoon. I feel I'm next in a long line of men in suits explaining what should be done in the Arctic and how it should be managed. But in any case, my name is Tom Barry, and I work with the Conservation of Arctic Flora and Fauna, or CAFF, which is the biodiversity group within the Arctic Council. CAFF is a group that sits on that boundary between science and policy, and we work to transform and communicate the findings from our monitoring and assessment programs into a form that can impact upon and inform policy and decision making in the Arctic. I'm also a geographer, so I like to have maps on every screen that I put up. So this red line shows the boundary within which CAFF operates, and this is a huge area. Everyone has a different understanding of what constitutes the Arctic, but this is 32 million square kilometers. It's almost a 6% of the Arctic, of the world's surface. So it's an enormous area within which we work. Often when I hear people speak about the Arctic, they say we need more information, we need more data, we need more science. And while all of this is true, there is an awful lot of information out there. And these dots and lines on the map here indicate areas where biodiversity monitoring has or is taking place over the last years. And the key challenge that we face is how do we better coordinate and standardize these activities so that the information they produce can be used to better inform what is happening in the Arctic and is more integrated and accessible. So what the Arctic Council is doing to try and respond to this challenge is that we're implementing what is known as the Circupolar Biodiversity Monitoring Programme. And this is an ecosystem-based program where we've identified key components in the Arctic's marine, terrestrial, freshwater and coastal ecosystems. And changes in these key components of those ecosystems may indicate larger trends or issues that we need to address, and that's what our program then monitors and tracks. As an example of what we're doing is we're just about to release early next year for an Arctic Council Ministerial the first integrated report which focuses on the state of the Arctic's marine biodiversity. And what we're doing there is we're trying to identify what is the status of monitoring in the Arctic, what is it telling us, and how we can better improve upon that. This diagram here provides an indication of some of the preliminary results that are coming from that work. And this particular diagram focuses on data availability for things from plankton to marine mammals, where red indicates that we have little or no knowledge, and green indicates that we have good information. And as you can see, there's quite a broad range between those two ends of the spectrum. So we do have an awful lot of work that we still need to accomplish. What we're also doing through the Arctic Council is we're trying to develop what's known as the Land Cover Change Index. And this is where we're working on developing remote sense products based on remote sensing information to try and provide a more cost-effective way to support more traditional hands-on monitoring activities in the Arctic. And this is where we're trying to produce products that stretch back from the early 70s until now and will provide us an insight into the longer-term trends and changes that are happening across the Arctic. We also have an open data policy in CAFF, so we try to work to make sure that all the information that CAFF produces is made freely and openly accessible. And the system that we use to do this is something called the Arctic Biodiversity Data Service, which also serves as the Arctic node for the Global Biodiversity Information Facility and UN's Ocean Information System, and of course also feeds into GEO. So my time is coming short, so I'd like just to finish with a note on what actually matters. Between 1979 and 2013, the ice-free season in the Arctic increased by 5 to 20 weeks in places across the Arctic, and that's an enormous change. And while this is often thought of as a climate change story, which of course it is, I'd like you to consider disappearing sea ice and habitat, because many of the species that we depend upon in the Arctic, and many of the Arctic's most well-known species, rely upon sea ice as its home. And when that ice disappears, their lives become unpredictable. So what we're experiencing is trying to understand a system that is at the most dynamic that it's ever been. And that's why the various different initiatives that were being presented by my colleagues here today are so important, because they're trying to find a way to show us how we can better understand what's happening, and more importantly, how we can take that information and deliver it to those people who are in positions of power that can make appropriate decisions. There we go.